What if I told you that the fate of the world's economy once hinged on a single agreement, signed in a small New Hampshire town? An agreement that tied every major currency to gold and set the stage for global financial stability, or so it seemed. This is the story of the Bretton Woods System. The Bretton Woods Conference 1944. In the summer of 1944, as the world was engulfed in the final stages of World War II, representatives from 44 Allied nations gathered in the small town of Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Their mission was nothing short of monumental: to create a new world financial order that would prevent the economic chaos that had contributed to two devastating global conflicts. Among the most influential figures were John Maynard Keynes, a renowned British economist, and Harry Dexter White, an American Treasury official. Keynes proposed an international clearing union that would create a new world currency called the Bancor, while White favored a system that put the US dollar at the center. The final agreement leaned heavily toward White's plan, but Keynes' ideas also shaped the discussions. The backdrop to this conference was a world ravaged by the Great Depression and two world wars. The economic instability of the 1930s, characterized by hyperinflation, currency devaluations, and trade wars, had shown the urgent need for a stable global financial system. Nations were desperate to avoid repeating these mistakes. The conference led to the creation of two key institutions: the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank, which were designed to stabilize the global economy and facilitate post-war reconstruction. The Bretton Woods Conference in 1944 was a significant event that brought together 730 delegates from 44 countries for 22 days of intense negotiations. During this period, the global economy was valued at approximately $4 trillion, adjusted to $2020. The Bretton Woods Agreement. The Bretton Woods System was an international monetary system established to create economic stability by pegging currencies to the US dollar, which was convertible to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. This system was designed to avoid the kind of competitive devaluations and economic isolationism that had plagued the world in the 1930s. The Bretton Woods Agreement required participating countries to maintain their currency values within a narrow band relative to the US dollar. If a country experienced a significant imbalance in its economy, it could devalue its currency, but only with IMF approval. This structure was intended to encourage economic cooperation and prevent the kind of erratic currency fluctuations that had contributed to global economic instability. The Bretton Woods system provided the world with a much-needed sense of stability, allowing for unprecedented growth in global trade and investment. However, it also meant that the US dollar became the world's primary reserve currency, placing enormous responsibility and power in the hands of the United States. The Bretton Woods system was built on a gold reserve standard, where the value of gold was set at $35 per ounce. During the 1950s and 1960s, global trade saw significant growth, averaging an annual increase of 8%. At the time of the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, the world's gold reserves were approximately 35,000 metric tons. Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF and World Bank. The IMF was established to oversee the global financial system, monitor exchange rates, and provide short-term financial assistance to countries facing balance of payments problems. This was particularly crucial for countries experiencing economic shocks or crises, as the IMF could provide the necessary liquidity to stabilize their economies. The World Bank, originally called the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD, was tasked with providing long-term loans to countries for post-war reconstruction and development projects. The focus was on rebuilding war-torn Europe, but over time, the World Bank's role expanded to include poverty reduction and infrastructure development in developing countries. IMF responsibility was to manage exchange rates and provided emergency financial assistance to countries in crisis. World Bank role was to focus on long-term economic development and poverty reduction. Both institutions played critical roles in the post-war recovery, but they also faced criticism. The IMF's conditionality often required countries to implement austerity measures that could lead to social unrest. The World Bank, on the other hand, was criticized for funding projects that sometimes led to environmental damage or displacement of local populations. In 1944, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, was established with an initial capital of $8.8 billion, a substantial amount for the time. Between 1945 and 1950, the World Bank approved loans totaling $2.7 billion, aimed at helping countries recover from the devastation of World War II. From 1947 to 1965, the World Bank provided over $25 billion in loans dedicated to reconstruction and development efforts around the globe. How the Bretton Woods system worked. At the core of the Bretton Woods system was a fixed exchange rate regime, where each currency was pegged to the US dollar, which was convertible to gold. Countries were required to maintain their exchange rates within a 1% band of parity with the dollar by buying or selling their own currency in the foreign exchange market. Countries with balance of payments deficits would use their gold reserves to buy back their currency, thus maintaining the fixed exchange rate. Conversely, countries with a surplus would accumulate dollars, which they could exchange for gold from the U.S. Treasury. This system required a delicate balance, as the U.S. needed to maintain sufficient gold reserves to back the dollar's convertibility. The Bretton Woods system succeeded in creating a stable international monetary environment that facilitated the post-war economic boom. Global trade expanded rapidly, and many countries experienced unprecedented economic growth. However, the system also faced significant challenges. The requirement to maintain fixed exchange rates placed enormous pressure on countries with persistent trade imbalances. Additionally, the U.S. found it increasingly difficult to maintain the dollar's convertibility into gold, especially as global demand for dollars outpaced U.S. gold reserves. In 1944, the United States held an impressive 20,000 metric tons of gold reserves, forming the backbone of the Bretton Woods system. During this era, the global economy experienced steady growth, with the global GDP increasing by an average of 4 to 5% annually. However, by the 1960s, foreign holdings of U.S. dollars had ballooned to $14 billion, while the U.S. gold reserves only amounted to $10 billion, highlighting the growing strain on the Bretton Woods system. The collapse of the Bretton Woods system. By the late 1960s, the Bretton Woods system was under severe strain. The U.S. was running large balance of payments deficits, partly due to the cost of the Vietnam War and domestic spending on social programs. This led to an overabundance of dollars in the world, causing other countries to doubt the U.S.'s ability to maintain the dollar's convertibility into gold. The Nixon Shock. On August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon took the dramatic step of suspending the dollar's convertibility into gold, effectively ending the Bretton Woods system. This event, known as the Nixon Shock, marked the beginning of the end for the fixed exchange rate system that had governed global finance for nearly 3 decades. The fundamental reason for the collapse was the system's inherent contradictions. As the global economy grew, the demand for dollars increased, but the U.S. could not increase its gold reserves at the same pace. This led to a situation where the number of dollars in circulation far exceeded the amount of gold backing them, causing a loss of confidence in the dollar. Aftermath. The collapse of the Bretton Woods system led to the adoption of floating exchange rates, where the value of currencies is determined by market forces rather than being pegged to a specific standard. This shift has had profound implications for global trade, investment, and economic policy. In 1970, the total supply of U.S. dollars was $48 billion. By 1971, the United States maintained gold reserves amounting to 8,000 metric tons. However, after the Bretton Woods system ended, global GDP growth became increasingly volatile, marked by frequent currency crises throughout the 1970s and 1980s. The legacy of Bretton Woods. Despite its collapse, the Bretton Woods system left a lasting legacy on the global financial landscape. The institutions it created, the IMF and the World Bank, continue to play a critical role in international economic policy. The idea of fixed exchange rates and multilateral cooperation continues to influence discussions on global economic stability. In today's globalized economy, the lessons from Bretton Woods remain highly relevant. Issues such as global trade imbalances, currency wars, and financial crises are still at the forefront of economic policy debates. The emphasis on multilateralism and economic cooperation that defined the Bretton Woods era serves as a reminder of the importance of international collaboration in addressing global challenges. After the collapse, global trade continued to grow, with an annual increase of approximately 7% in the 1970s and 1980s. As of today, the IMF and World Bank have grown to include 190 member countries, reflecting their ongoing importance in the global economy. Conclusion. The Bretton Woods system was a bold experiment in global economic governance. While it ultimately failed, its influence can still be seen in the way nations approach international economic cooperation today. The story of Bretton Woods is a testament to the challenges and complexities of managing a global economy, a challenge that continues to evolve in the 21st century. As we've seen, the Bretton Woods system was a crucial turning point in modern financial history. Its rise and fall offer valuable lessons for understanding our current global economy. If you found this documentary insightful, make sure to subscribe to Archivist Animates, where we continue to explore the events and decisions that have shaped the world as we know it. Don't forget to hit the like button and click the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Let's keep the conversation going. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on the Bretton Woods system and its impact on today's economy.